The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome back to another edition of the Coach Bill Clark Show, presented by Buffalo Rock and Dr. Pepper. I'm Pat Smith, along with Molly Robinson and the Coach Bill Clark. Coach, did you survive snow ice-mageddon over the weekend?
Yeah, we made it.
Did you get the pontoon boat out on the frozen lake?
Sure. Yeah, did a little ice fishing.
Have you ever been ice fishing?
I never have. We need to do that.
Because I know you've done. This is a great topic. Because I know you've done some big game hunting out in the, like Montana and the Dakotas, right?
Yep.
What y'all hunt?
Elk.
Elk.
Yep.
Successful?
Yeah, very successful.
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy that more than, let's say, deep sea fishing in the Gulf of America?
That's a good question. I think for me to get to be out in Montana and the wild and all the things that went with it, yes, I love that. But I love deep sea fishing as well.
You like that more than the big game hunting?
Yeah, I like to bird hunt.
Okay.
And that's one of the things I want to go out Nebraska and some of these places, and do that. I've heard great things about that. But
Governor Tuberville can take you out to Arkansas, do duck hunting. He used to do that every year after the football season.
Yeah, I hadn't done that. So
you haven't done that?
I just was coaching through a lot of that.
That was my next question. It kind of led into a rabbit hole of hunting. When you were younger, was your dad a hunter? Did you guys go out hunting any, or was it just all football?
Yeah, his dad was a big hunter.
Okay,
and when it was hunting season, he hunted. When it was fishing season, he fished, fly fished. So my dad was, I think his dad was gone a lot. Come back from World War II, was gone a lot, and so he chose not to hunt a lot. And of course, he was coaching football, and I think that was kind of the hobby, which is kind of where I was.
Yeah, I have so many people that I know that hunt, and they're avid hunters, and I just never did as a kid.
Yeah.
I was always involved in sports year round, and my father didn't do it. No, his father did. He grew up on a farm.
Right.
But, I just did not have access to it. But I have so many people now as an adult that I know that do it, and they want to take me out there, but I get bored easy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could go and sit in a tree stand. I don't know if
I got
do
to go, I think I told you before, right before Christmas, got to go down and do a sit up and stand, got, 4,000 acres, and there was deer, and I got to shoot a hog. That was fun.
Did you really? Wild hog?
Yeah, and there was a bird. We had to go hunt some quail, and these were more in coveys, more wild, but the dogs, and I love that, and I didn't really get exposed to that. We shot some birds growing up, but it wasn't, I get to go out with the dogs and watch them and get to shoot, and there's some competitiveness of shooting. Now, that's fun. Bird hunting like that, is fun. But I'm just never been a big deer hunter, Now, to get to go out and see the vast, Montana and Wyoming.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, you can see that country and that being fun. Of course, deep sea fishing, love that. So, but just never done a lot of it because, coaching was my hobby.
Yeah. Well, in regards to like you as a kid, and you just talked about how you didn't do a lot of hunting, but as a kid, did you play sports all year round?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when it got cold, you were in the gym playing basketball, and then in the spring you started playing baseball, and then obviously late summer, early fall, you're a football guy.
Yeah, my dad was being a coach, and and as we talk about Coach Safely, he was really. I think there was just this deal of when you get to junior high and high school, that's what really counts. Play the youth sports, but I think he had seen some guys that weren't great coaches. And I think just really being careful with me with football. And I was dying to play, as you can imagine, knowing I wanted to coach at 5 or 6 years old. And I didn't get to play till junior high, which, I always thought was a little late. I didn't do that to my son, but it was the lack of coaching in football. Now, what happened, though, when I got there, I was ready. So I didn't face the burnout. I think a lot of people did. But I think just what is that age to play? Now, I let mine play as long as I knew the coach and felt good about it. But, no, I was playing something year-round. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we shot some birds and some stuff, but it was all ball.
And probably you and I, around the same age, it was probably a situation where you were young when literally you would go out. You would not have organized leagues to play in like you do now.
Yeah.
Like anybody – whether it's travel baseball, travel soccer, travel basketball, even football, flag football in the spring, whatever the case may be, you can find a league. Back then, it was like you get the neighborhood kids together and your parents would say, hey, come back home when the street lights come on.
Absolutely.
Like that is your curfew.
Oh, yeah.
Like you better be home before the street lights come on.
Yeah, and I just remember sitting out there shooting basketball till my hands bled and praying that you could get a game, especially like somebody like me lived out, we had some lakes on our road. We were outside of town.
Yeah.
And ended up with a couple boys they weren't on my street because we were, out by ourselves, but they were nearby where we could actually get together to play.
Yeah.
And guys that got to grow up with other guys around was that was a dream. But the organization was lacking. You just didn't have the access.
No, you literally, hey, there's a kid that, like 2 or 3 streets. I never forget this. Of course, I grew up in Missouri. I didn't move here until I was in the 8th grade. But in Missouri, like, we played neighborhood football.
Yeah.
And what we would do, because there was no organized,
right,
where I grew up. And so basically we say, hey, there's like 3 kids that live like 3 streets over.
Yeah.
They would get together 5 or 6 kids, and we'd get 5 or 6 on our street.
Yeah. And
then we ended up meeting in a field and playing a game.
Well, I think the things that, and I talked about this a lot, I think a lot, we always want to do a little bit better than our parents did, even though we were loved. And, hopefully we were, I was, and Dad was a coach, Mom was a home ec teacher. Dad was tough. Mom, was the softer side. But I think as I got to see my son have access to more things, I want him to have that ability that probably I didn't have. And I think that's what happens a lot. I think as parents, we want to give our kids things. And I think that's probably a lot of people with great intentions. And I think that's where we get into this overboard, and we overdo it. And I think, we're just talking about the sport of baseball, which, we love. And, but I think, as I talk to these guys in some of the major leagues, they're really worried about it, because I think we're seeing this burnout because they're playing so much. And I used to try to explain this to guys. I said, you will burn out. And I would have these kids come to me that had played so much baseball, and it always seems baseball, they were trying to play them year round. And that was, gosh, that's now, I can go back to early 2000s, 25 years ago, that was happening.
Yes.
So much less what we're doing now, which is taking the next step. So I think a lot of that is well-intentioned, but it's turned into something more than it should be. And I think that's when we talk about playing multiple sports and keeping things in season. And
CoachSafely.org.
Amen. So it's like, if you love the games, if you believe in it's important for them, then not just protecting the sport, which we talk about all the time on our show, whether we're talking, a lot of football, but you got to protect their love of it.
Yeah.
And I think the burnout is a real thing. It's a real thing.
There's no question. It is interesting. I'll never forget, I had an opportunity. I had dinner with Steve Spurrier one night, and we were talking about his success and just talking about what he looks for when he's out recruiting. Because Steve Spurrier obviously was an outstanding on-the-field coach, but he also recruited very well. And he told an interesting story how he would, dictate to his assistant coaches, okay, when we start looking at these kids, obviously what they do on the football field is important. But for Steve Spurrier, he told me that he always put a priority on a basketball player. Because in Steve Spurrier's mind, that was the best athlete that you could go out and recruit.
Yeah.
Someone that played basketball during the winter and played football during the fall. For you as a coach, when you were out there and you were recruiting and looking at talent, what were some of the things that were important for you as you were trying to get that kid to come to school for you?
So really, are we talking about gauging how good he is or what's his ability also? And I think if I was looking at a kid that played multiple sports, specifically if you had a big guy that wrestled.
To show his versatility.
That's right. Okay. And there's just something about singular competition where you got to depend on yourself. I think we were always looking for that other piece to the puzzle. Could I go see him on the basketball court? Baseball, there was some hand-eye coordination there. That was probably because that's probably the least athletic. Doesn't mean it's not a skill, and there's great athletes out there.
He's taking shots at baseball players, Molly.
Well, you go look at
shots at baseball players.
Molly. But the baseball players, and I told you, I went and watched the Red Sox this year. Looking at those guys, they look like a bunch of football players. They're athletic.
They work out now. Back in the old days, that was not that important.
That's right. But I think what we're seeing there, I go back and look at how many of those, not, pitchers, a lot of those specialized, but a lot of those guys have played other sports. But I think as a coach, I like to see that because what were we trying to do? We're trying to put this whole complete puzzle together on this kid, on this player. So there was all the things of what do people say about him? What do other coaches say about him? I hear this. What's the basketball coach? What's the wrestling coach?
So kind of like what Dabo Swinney does now currently. I'm not saying that others don't do it, but Dabo puts a premium like and I know you know that program extremely well, and I've had some kids that I called their football games that ended up playing at Clemson, and I understand the deep dive that they did on those kids before they gave them a scholarship offer. I'm talking about full social media deep dive,
Yes.
those coaching interviews that you were just referring to. For you to get a scholarship at Clemson, you had to like really check off a lot of different boxes that maybe a lot of different schools wasn't able to do in regards to making sure that they had the right fit. So to
Yeah.
speak.
So first, have I got the ability? You know, are we a good enough program that I get to just pick and choose? So, you know, that didn't just happen. You got to bid a spot. Now, you go create that by winning, which creates people wanting to come. I get all that. Come to a UAB, and you got to sometimes do more with less. So what I try to do, is this a guy that was late to the game? Is this guy that had been an underachiever or late grower or whatever that was? Then you start putting these other things together with that. So all those pieces is what you do. I mean, look at what they do in the NFL. And, you know, if you've never really talked to anybody, they're going to go back and call and ask. Call to the high school. I was the high school coach when they called me about Roman Harper. And I'm saying, you know, no brainer. You got to have this guy. You know, and that's the question. Who are they talking to? And I just tell my guys, man, they're going to talk to the strength coach. They're going to talk to the assistant at the front desk. They're going to talk to if they could get somebody in the cafeteria. You know, how do you treat everybody at a premium? Because those are the things when you get them to their self, who are they? And that's, you know, why they do the Wonderlic test for the pro guys and what's their psychology, what's their mental makeup. So, yeah, we were always trying to I want this whole picture, especially, he may be a little less than here, but he's got all these other intangibles that's going to make that, or he's going to work, he's going to train, he's going to care more than what we necessarily see right now.
It's interesting, and you might not remember this, but oh my goodness, it was obviously before the pandemic, but I'll never forget coming to your office down at UAB and walking in, and you had all of your potential players that you were looking at up on these big boards.
Mm-hmm.
And I distinctly remember listing of all the guys that you guys were currently looking at or recruiting, and I didn't notice any stars next to anybody's name. And so that leads to my next question, because it's been a story this week, because Nick Saban made a statement about people not paying attention to recruiting services, and you know, the star system has been around for quite some time. So I'm just curious, and I didn't see it on your boards. Did you guys ever look at the outside recruiting services when you started looking at potential players, or that was 100% internal information that you guys were putting together yourself?
Yeah, we were looking at internal information. Now, did I want to know what other schools offered him? And I literally had guys, and we've talked about this on the show at FAU. It would be if we offered somebody, they would get offered. Now, I was in the opinion early on that if I offer you, that's my word.
Right.
Now, granted, there's 10 of you, I got one spot. But if I've said 10 times, and that we had to manage that, because what was happening, everybody was just throwing out offers and they didn't mean anything. Well, I've been offered by Alabama. I've been offered by Auburn. What, you know, is it committable? You know, that became the new statement. Well, can you commit? Well, I don't know. We'll try and commit. See if I'll take your commit. We can't take your commit right now. I said, there you go. So that became a thing for all of us. And I wanted to be a person of my word. But so I said, this guy's got to understand what this means. This means, you know, I would have sent a letter to him, you know, that said, we're offering you based on you fulfilling the rest of this year, you keeping your grades up. Now, there were a lot of those, obviously, we would take that commitment. But even then, we're going to take your commitment, but you have to maintain X, Y, and Z. So, but I think going back, who's this person, whole picture, best athlete we can get at every position who is well-rounded, well thought of. And I think the people that do the deep dives and do the most in-depth, they're going to be the ones that get lucky, you know, more than not.
In regards to after it was all said and done, and you and I did a signing day together. Matter of fact, it was 10 years ago. I'm going to give Molly a picture of me and you 10 years ago that you and I did together. When it was all said and done, the hay was in the barn, everybody signed, sealed, and delivered. Did you ever go back and look at maybe another like a recruiting service to see, okay, look, they got Jim Bob as a 4-star.
Yeah.
This guy's us as a 5-star.
Yeah.
Did you ever go look just out of curiosity, not dictating whether you're going to recruit the kid, but when it was all said and done, just to see what other people potentially was saying about either your recruiting class or individual players that you just recruited?
We did. I think you went back and just said, what does it look like? We stack up. I felt so good about what we would do as far as how we vetted them. And
that stuff didn't matter.
It didn't matter a lot to me.
But you could use it as motivation because you love the motivation.
Absolutely. Tactic. Yeah, I think that's what came out as we went through. But that was, and I was talking to a coach today, I'd stopped by to see Kyle Tatum, who played for me, just took the Moody job and asked me to come by. And so I stopped by and we were just, the things that are important, and we've talked about this. If it's important to you, you say it again, you say it again, you say it again. And I think that was the motivation as we lived our life training to, hey, who believed in you? We did. Who didn't believe in you? You got something to prove.
Yeah.
We got something to prove here. We're going to show them, type mentality. And I think those guys with a chip on their shoulder. Now, granted, let me get a 220-pound guy that runs 4.340. Yeah. I mean, that helps too.
Yeah.
But when you've had to do more, I always said more with less, and that's not necessarily a knock. It's just the guy that had something to prove, was not going to be denied. And I had so much fun with those guys that I knew were good players, didn't have all the offers, whether I gave them a scholarship or they were a walk-on who I said, you got every chance in the world to earn it. And then they did. And that happened for us over and over. We had such a good walk-on program. And we were so blessed being right here at UAB. Yeah. I had access to so many schools and they'd be like, and that guy's just sitting there. We'll take him. If you can make your way for a year, you're going to have a chance. I said, no, I'm not promising you anything, but by next spring, you get in the 2 deep, we're going to find a scholarship, that kind of thing. And to see that work over and over and over again was great.
So you mentioned it earlier in one of your answers. So there were programs that would bird dog UAB in regards to in your conference.
Oh, yeah.
That where if UAB and Bill is going out and they see something in this kid, then let's just go ahead and throw a blanket.
That would drive me crazy. And they'd tell me.
They would tell you.
Oh, yeah, we're going to offer everybody you offer on, especially like defense. We're offering everybody you offer on defense. I'm like, you don't.
What was your response to them when they would tell
make me mad, And I'm like, you don't even look at them? No, we know if you're offering them.
So you're doing their work for them.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, and we would watch, and then, of course, a lot of them wouldn't tell me, and we would offer the next day, he'd get an offer. And I'd call, have the call. I said, oh, no, they hadn't come in. I mean, literally get a phone call going, we're offering you, which means, once again, they've just thrown an offer out there that really doesn't mean anything. And that's the kind of things that would drive me crazy. And then in-state, and I've talked to you about that. These guys that were at Alabama or Auburn for a cup of coffee.
Right.
And then, but the high school coach in the state of Alabama knew them from Alabama, from Auburn. I said, well, they're not there. They're at FAU or wherever they were. How do they have such good access to our guys? Now, if your player wants to go down there, but they had created a relationship because those two schools were so great. I'm like, this coach is not an Alabama or Auburn guy. I'm from here, Yeah. I mean, I'm a high school coach. So I think that's that point of how competitive it gets and how much time we spend at it. And I always wanted to treat the high school coaches right. We had chalk talks, 4 or 5 weeks, Wednesday nights, have some pizza, come in, talk ball. I always wanted to have that access given. And I'm like, who's doing what we're doing? Somebody else caring about the high school coach as much. So I just wanted us to do all the things. And, and then I think that gave us a chance to at least get great feedback from these coaches because they knew we cared what they thought about.
In regards to those other conference foes that were bird dogging, I like to call it, shadowing you guys and offering, you don't have to give me a player, but was there a circumstance or two in which somebody that you guys felt pretty good about and that you offered that one of those other schools that just gave them the offer based on the fact that you did? Did they end up going to that other school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It didn't happen a lot. I always felt, but Yeah, and then there was some mysterious circumstances
Oh,
that made it even worse.
let me clarify this for our audience. That was before NIL.
Yes, that was pre-NIL. And especially some of the kids that showed interest in what are we getting? And, and you'd say, well, you're getting a scholarship. You're getting, and later on, obviously, we started having some money to give the stipends, and which wasn't a lot. But look at our education. We win.
Mm-hmm.
Look at our guys we're putting in the league now. And it would be, they literally the next day showed up at this guy's house, especially those right before signing date. Now, that happened twice, I can remember, where they literally, it's like the last possible day they could be, and they show up. We've had this kid committed. And then under mysterious circumstances, he goes to that other school, and you're like, you weren't recruiting him. You didn't even know who he was. And all of a sudden, he's going, you knew what happened. So
just think back to the days of how you felt with the February signing date, and then multiply that now towards a kid could leave mid-season and transfer to another school, or the transfer portal, multiple openings up until this year. I mean, how in the world was there enough medication out there to let you be able to do your job?
I don't even. I just, as I talk to our guys, and they are literally pulling their hair out. They don't know what to do. So today, I won't say what school. Coach, I've known him for years and years and years, and he's worked his way up the ranks. He just sees me. He's like, man,
bless your heart. I'm glad you got out when you got out.
I mean, he's like, I know. He said, I've heard your name so many times, and I just heard you weren't. I said, no, I couldn't get excited. As much as I love the game and love the kids and coaches, and he said, we're going to have Congress do something, which is a shame. He said, but that's the only thing I know, the only hope we have. Now, imagine going, we can't control our own game, that if we don't get Congress involved, where we're going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, he was volunteering it, and he said, I know why. And I said, do you miss? I said, oh, yeah, things I miss, of course. But I don't miss that.
No.
And I was just starting to get a taste of it.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about constructing a football team through recruiting, and nobody does it better than Webb Concrete and Building Supplies.
Yeah, Phil Webb and our guys, 7 locations, all, Birmingham, Wedowee, Center, Pell City. You got all the supplies, flooring, all the things you need to build a house, a business, whatever. Those guys they do a great job.
So we spent a lot of time on the show today, Coach, talking about recruiting, and I am curious, was there any particular player or players that, let's say that you got him on campus, let's say he's a wide receiver, and then you saw a need at the cornerback position, and you felt pretty good about your wide receiver room, but, it was like, let's convert him to the other side of the ball. Did you have a lot of guys like that because he was a good athlete that you're able to convert?
I think usually – in the way we did it, he was a multi-sport athlete, but the kid usually came in saying, I want to be a blank. I see myself as a, because he was a both-way player or a guy that had played some other, and so usually I wanted them to know what they were going to be. Now, let's use T.D. Marshall.
Okay.
Great athlete from Leeds.
Yep.
Thought we had a great shot at him, and all of a sudden Tennessee comes in. Literally the week before signing day, which was insane, they drop him. So he goes, plays for Sanford. He comes, I want to walk on, need to walk on for a year. And he was an offensive player, been a quarterback. I'm like, this is an NFL corner. He's long, sub 4.4, smart, ball skills, the whole nine. So that was an evolution of, you do understand, as athletic as you are and as talented as you are, if you ever want to be an NFL corner, and that changed, right. And he ended up moving to corner. I've seen so many bad things happen with guys. Now, of course, that used to be the thing. Coach Bryant was going to sign 20 quarterbacks and
convert them to
DB or whatever they needed. I know Ricky Davis, and who was my agent for years. He went to Alabama to play quarterback. And ends up playing NFL as a DB and team captain and all that. But he said, I almost thought about leaving. Just for me, I always want to be very upfront. If a guy was an athlete, that's a little bit different. We just said, hey, we're going to find the best place. But usually we were listening to what they said. But TD was one of those where I knew immediately, and this guy's a corner.
Yeah, you just could see it.
This guy's a corner,
Yeah,
and
just
an
had it.
unbelievable. And John Neal, we would both say, this guy's an NFL corner. John Neal, who was
Yeah.
UAB and then Oregon all
Oregon,
those years,
yep.
and he would go by TD and go, NFL corner. Yeah. And ended up doing that.
Well, one thing is for sure, you're smart that you were able to figure out that he was going to be an NFL corner. Smart Bank, great people, they know banking.
Yeah, our friends at Smart Bank, just kind of like we talk about all our sponsors, a lot of that is just what kind of people they are and doing what they say. All the amenities of a big bank, but great people. Like I talked about last week, I think our branch here on 280 was, from an efficiency standpoint, was the number one in the whole Smart Bank world. So, go check our guys out at Smart Bank.
Coach, we're officially in the offseason. I know we'll have that second signing period coming up in about a week or so. Just want to get your thoughts now in regards to these coaches now. They got their transfer portal. They got their haul there.
Yep.
And so now you're starting to turn the page towards spring ball. What are they doing right now, putting things together for the first time they're going to be able to get those guys out on the field?
Yeah, I think you got such big turnover. I mean, it reminds me so much of we started the program. I'm laughing, thinking, yeah, I know exactly what it is. Where you're trying to culture and who is this guy and what's his skill set and getting to be a team. I mean, it's warp speed to weight room training, fourth quarter program, whatever you call it. All the extra stuff that they're trying to build a team quickly as they go into spring. Because, you asked me this last time about how quickly do we give them things. You're trying to give them everything you can because, anything
So the playbook's already in the hands of the offense.
as much as they can.
Okay.
Now, you're wanting as a coach, you're like, all right, what are we going to change? What are we going to add? What are we not going to add? So, hey, we know these are staples that we're going to run. Like we always say, you can call it blue cheese, but it's called something, and you got to know what that means.
Yeah.
So when we come to spring, you're going to be ready
The
to go.
terminology, they're familiar with it.
And I've been shocked how many coaches I've said, all right, when spring? And they'll be like, yeah, let me get that to you. Where we've always known, I mean, you leave, you've already set up spring.
Yeah.
Here's your days. But I've had so many of them that were like, I've been so focused on just keeping my own players. And it's been, as I said, as I've talked and saw the guy today, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
It's just overwhelming. So they're trying to give them everything they can, get them in the weight room, start training, doing the extra things as they try to go into spring so they can evaluate.
Yeah. Get acclimated to your new home.
That's it. And, they've got time now post-spring that we never had, all the OTA days and all this extra
Stuff that was outlawed years ago they now have access to.
I would be more what I got to have enough so fundamentally we can get better,
Yeah.
And as a coach, you don't want to waste a lot of time on things that you wouldn't do. So let's make sure they don't understand what these are, along with as much development as we can give them.
Donahue Chevrolet, a great sponsor here at the Bill Clark Show.
Yeah, our friends at Donahue. Obviously, I've had a vehicle with them for years, and all the Chevy products they have, and they've got all kind of deals going on. DonahueChevrolet.com. You can check out all the deals. But great folks, as we talk about all our sponsors that'll take care of you. Donahue Chevrolet.
It's been a very, very quick show, as it is each and every week. We appreciate everybody tuning in. And our remaining minutes, just talk about Coach Safely. You guys got a lot going on. You got a new app release that you guys, an update that you're talking about coming up very, very soon.
I think this will be the biggest thing, maybe one of the biggest things to me in youth sports that's happened, because we've had this course. There's other courses out there, but our course, which I think is the number one safety course in the country, bar none, will be available on an app that a coach could sit there and say, heat illness, concussion, all these things are going to be available. We're going to have video.
That's outstanding.
So practice organization, all that fun stuff. But from a pure safety standpoint, they'll be able to see, who's trained, who's not, but also just updates. If I'm on the field and I want to do it as I'm coaching my 8-year-olds, I'll be able to do it. And that's coming out next week or so.
That's awesome. I saw a PSA, David Pollock, and I know you got some others that's being released out. Great partners with CoachSafely.org.
Yeah, man. Just, we're into the state of Georgia now. So, obviously Coach Key and Coach Smart, but David did us one. Yeah. We got Coach Donnan. We've got the track coach, baseball. We got others, that are going to be joining in. PSA-wise.
Oh, it's going to be great. Always appreciate the great listeners, the jocks watching us also on YouTube. Keep it tuned right here. We'll be back next week at the same time. This is the Coach Bill Clark Show presented by Buffalo Rock. Dr. Pepper, have a good week.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.